Hey, welcome back to the Real Estate Excellence Podcast. Today's guest began her real estate interest while she was in college at UNC Wilmington, working in a local brokerage office. She has a passion for photography and a background in marketing, giving her a great foundation for her real estate business. She considers herself a concierge real estate agent with a focus on luxury properties here in Northeast Florida. Let's welcome the lady that will take the stress out of buying and selling, Meredith Rowe with Real Broker.
Hello, Tracy. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Normally I don't talk as long in the pre-show, but we had a great pre-show,
We did.
so which will make the show better.
Yeah.
But actually, one thing I've been trying to do is, and I think when I initially invited, but you didn't respond to it, I have to probably be more direct. I found having a little pre-show or having a discussion, maybe a cup of coffee the day before or the week before, it really helps me build up even a better show. So
Yes.
what we covered there hopefully will allow me to even go deeper
I love
into your bio there.
love
So I want to kick off so I get it out so I don't forget, because sometimes I get carried away. Remy Graphics, local here. Remy Graphics makes these mugs for you, which you have in your gift bag. You have
Thank you.
a nice one there.
I love
I think it's should be the hot pink one, because I only have hot
That's
pink and the blue one.
fantastic. Very fitting. I'm a
Pink for
very
the
hot pink
girls,
girl, yeah.
blue for the guys,
Love
type
it.
of thing. But they will do one-offs. If you want to make a special one for your current customer, John and Sally, welcome to Jacksonville, 2024, whatever, she will make one off. So you don't have to order a dozen of them at a time. She will make those, which I think, to me, when it comes to giving, I call them tchotchkes. When it comes to giving these things out, the value is in whether or not they're going to hold on to it.
Right.
And if you put their name on it, they will never throw it away.
Absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
a big fan of not putting my name on everything to give to customers or making it personalized to them if
Yeah.
I do, so that maybe my logo's on there really small, but they don't want something that has my name on it. They want something that feels personal to them.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And
yeah, I
they're
love that.
they'll remember who gave it to them.
Absolutely.
That's no doubt about it. It's even buying. I call it tchotchkes and trinkets and trash, because a lot of it, that's where it goes. I really think it needs to be. What's that? Guys always want. What do they say when they give the gift at Christmas time, like a blender to their wife? Something they're going to use, right? We thinking more
I think
logically.
it needs to be useful
Yeah.
and
The
practical.
little doggy bag with the dog bags in it. That's something people don't throw that stuff away.
They don't.
Yeah.
They don't.
So,
So
all right.
interesting.
That's my preaching on
Love it.
trinkets and trash and
Love it. And I like
gift
that they
giving.
do a one-off. That's a really good thing.
So you are recently been invited for this competition and reality show. I know it's some of it's you can't spill all of it on, but just give us a surface level. What's going on? You and Megan and
Yeah, so Megan Farrell Nelson and
Mm-hmm.
Amy Wojcicki and I was sitting in my bed one Saturday morning, started getting screenshots, people sending me saying, hey, you have to audition for the show. You have to audition for the show. There was a local casting call for a show called So You Think You Can Sell Luxury. It's like a real estate competition show. We knew nothing about it. We showed up for the competition, fell in love with the producer, or the audition, not the competition. We showed up for the audition,
Right.
and it was so much fun. Didn't know if it would turn into anything. We found out that night we were cast. We were going to be on the show. Filming actually started last week. So we do have an NDA. We can't disclose a lot, but it's a pilot series, and it is a competition like March Madness style, bracket knockout for a bunch of different rounds. There's 16 teams competing. Some are individual agents. We're the largest group competing with the three of us, so we're not a team in our normal businesses, but we are all at the same brokerage, so we're competing as a team because three heads are better than one, and we're really excited to see what happens.
so who was it? Did Megan reach out, or did the actual producers of the show reach out to you?
So
or-
it was a casting call that had been posted online, and a bunch of my friends and clients started sending me the screenshots, and I was like, "Oh, this is so cool! Like maybe I should do this. Like I want to be on HGTV or whatever, like whatever. We didn't know at the time what network it would be, and so I sent the screenshot to Amy and Megan, and I was like, "Guys, we should do this. Will y'all go with me?"
So we were talking trash in the pre-show. You guys need to just come to an agreement. Let's like talk a lot of trash about each other.
No way.
Yeah, why not? I think
No.
that
Because we want to maintain a
all in good
relationship.
fun. All in good fun.
We want to actually be friends after the show.
Well, I mean, I think the goal. I mean, we were talking, as we mentioned earlier. First thing you said is the casting call. Well, that's how Ryan Serhant, went, took it to another level. Obviously, but I mean, he has a level of trash talking. There was, the initial group there at Selling New York. They were, because they were competitive.
Well, you have to think what makes good TV. So many TV shows have a little bit of drama and they get you invested.
Yeah.
And so we know we have to play into the TV show aspect a little bit, but because it is a real estate show, it is competition. We also are like, okay, let's maintain our professionalism as much as possible.
Well,
I'm sure
you
it'll get a
can
little dicey.
you can maintain professionalism here because the one of the things, and I'm glad you said, just because it just rang in my head, something I've been preaching ever since this whole we'll call it the NAR, National Association of Realtors. I'm told, don't call it NAR, National Association of Realtors. Settlement and the whole. We'll talk about the buyer broker agreement and what you're doing now later, but. The collateral damage is the real estate agent reputation. Yeah, I think, because again, I think a lot of it's clickbait because people are like, oh, let's talk trash about real estate agents. We'll get clicks, from social media. But there's also, as you've in just a short time, you've been an agent. I'm sure you've experienced many people don't understand the 90% of what you do. Under the surface, you're doing in the background, cleaning out garages and other things like that. If you haven't picked weeds and cleaned out garages when your seller moved out so the new buyer can move in because they just left, didn't clean the house or anything, just, you haven't been in real estate long enough. Right.
That's one of the things with this show that they want to show is like selling real estate is really not like selling Sunset, right?
Yeah.
Like, we actually work really hard, and I try to post a good bit of that on my social media. Like, you'll see reels on there of me vacuuming or scrubbing baseboards when the cleaners cancel at the last minute, or whatever.
Or they don't do a good enough job.
Yeah, absolutely. And all the things, it's not glamorous. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of behind the scenes that people don't see.
Hoarders was a great TV series. People got stuck on that until the point where it became like every show was like the same thing. Yeah. It reached its lid. But I think because that's reality, that stuff actually is going on all around us. Yeah. And I think, a good TV show, hopefully if this series goes this way, or if someone's out there thinking about a real estate, I think, finding those, I'm trying to think of her name, crazy shit in real estate is actually the name of the show, the podcast, but she tries to bring up the stories of Lee Brown. That's Lee Brown out of North Carolina. Yep. She talks about crazy shit in real estate. And I think there should be more stories out there for that.
There should be.
But here on this show, professionalism, because I think real estate agents really, as housing, is such an impact on our economy. Yeah. Real estate agents are the pillar. They are the influencers. They are, really a great part of the community. Yeah. And I think the more real estate agent inputs themselves into that, the more successful they'll be.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
Completely agree. I think it's so important.
So kick us off. You're from North Carolina.
Yep. Born and raised in North Carolina, a little rural town in the middle of North Carolina. Grew up, my grandparents owned a restaurant, or pseudo-grandparents kind of adopted me. Mm-hmm. Worked at the restaurant from the time I was 14 years old. My parents instilled a hard work ethic in me. Grew up, on a farm and, the very country lifestyle. Decided I needed to be close to the beach. Love the beach. So I applied to all these colleges. North Carolina has really incredible schools. Got accepted to a lot of them. Went straight to the beach, though. Went to UNC Wilmington. My sister was already there, and I knew I just needed to be close to the ocean. So went to UNC Wilmington, double majored in elementary ed and psychology, but quit my senior year, so never got that degree. Didn't need it. You
were at the 11th hour and walked away.
Yes.
Why that?
So I met my now husband, and we had our son. And I got to the student teaching portion of my degree and was going to need to pay for daycare, pay for tuition, and work for free, and decided that was not the life I wanted. And I had already started a photography business at the time. And so I really already had a thriving business. And the degree, it was just, why accrue another semester of debt when I'm already making money over here and get to take my son with me most of the time. Right. So I quit, and I said, I'll go back in a couple of years. I'll finish it in a couple of years when he's older. He's almost 16, and I never went back.
You should find a couple courses just to finish it.
During COVID, I actually did apply to a college that would accept all of my transfer credits,
Right.
and got accepted. And I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna finish.
Just to say
it's
you did it.
COVID. I've got all this time. And then I started again looking at the cost, and I was like, what's the benefit
Right,
other than
right.
bragging rights?
Well, yeah,
And
or
it was
just
for my
say,
own pride and ego.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
like, well, maybe one day we'll see.
yeah. Well, that's interesting because I was not elementary. I mean, I was education major.
Okay.
It was secondary education, and I did the student teaching and everything. And I actually I went back to it and taught 1 year, but it was like, this is not. I got in sales too early.
Yeah.
And I think you're in it now where your income's somewhat unlimited.
Right.
The only thing really limiting is you and your time.
Right.
How much more you want to spend into it and how good you are at your craft or whatever, all the things which we'll talk about hitting the lid. We talked early in the pre-show, but there. So at that time, so photography comes on the scene here. So where did you create this passion?
So I had always, actually in high school, had an art teacher who really took me under her wing, loved her to pieces. She was an entrepreneur herself, was learning photography. She was like, hey, do you want to do this? It meant I got to miss a lot of class. And so I missed class to go learn photography with her. By the time I graduated, I was doing senior portraits for people. Went on to school. My sister was a broker at a real estate brokerage on Oak Island, and her boyfriend at the time, now husband, was also a broker there, and then their broker in charge was a good friend of the family. And so they said, hey, I wanted to move down there in the summer before college to live with my sister. And her boss said, sure, you can come manage the office. You can answer the phones and help with advertising and help plan broker opens and, do all these things. So it was a really cool experience. I really got to go in and learn a lot of the ins and outs of real estate, of just watching and listening. I'm a student above all else. I love to learn. I'm kind of a nerd, really. So I'm a person who reads books. I do all my research. I like to know everything about everything the best I can. And so I would follow them around, shadow them, just really absorb everything they were doing, and really thought, I'll for sure get my real estate license and do this because I really love it. But got to have the experience pre-social media of what the real estate world was, of, we're putting up billboards and mailing things out all the time, and they were doing radio ads, and what it really looked like to have a broker's open when you can't put out a Facebook event.
Right.
You're having to call the other brokerages and say, hey, we're hosting this event, would you like to come? So I really learned a lot that way.
Right. Yeah, pretty much email. And physically getting on the phone, which sometimes today, if you're trying to have an event, we know real estate agents, you need to be pounded like on a daily basis. Reminder. Hey, we're having an event. Because a lot of you make a decision at the 11th hour, and the listeners are laughing right now because they know it's true. So
during that time, I kept doing photography on the side just for friends and clients. I remember one day I had an engagement session for some friends, and the girl said, here, we're going to pay you. And I was like, oh, no, I just do this for fun. And I was like, I have a job. Don't worry about that. And then she was like, no, I'm absolutely going to pay you. And I went and filed for my LLC the next day. I was like, oh, I can make money doing this. And it's something I love. And fast forward, I ended up opening my own studio, was a primarily newborn and family photographer for almost 15 years.
Wow. Well, it was like, I imagine that industry, I don't know a lot about it, or I can only imagine what's in it. But obviously, I know there's some big corporations. I know another real estate, the Katie family, that's their background, their whole, because their father goes way back to doing yearbook photos and all that kind of stuff. Did it just kind of burn out on you, or what brought it to an end? Or I imagine, you still do some on the side, but
so really, I did it up until about 2 years ago. I got my real estate license. I'm kind of fast forwarding a little bit, but so I did a lot of it. I was, by God's grace, was really successful. I taught a lot of workshops. I taught a lot of other people how to do what I did. I was really niched down into newborn photography and birth photography for a long time, and I loved it. I had a studio in my home. For a while, I had an external studio. There was so much flexibility because I was my boss, and I really fell in love with being an entrepreneur. My husband traveled a lot, and I really wanted to homeschool my children. And so, even though I went to school to be a teacher, I decided to keep my boys home and homeschool them. And so it provided me that flexibility to be able to really be present with my kids all the time, and also bring in an income and kind of feed that creative side of me, and then really learn so much about what it means to grow a business, what it means to grow a business as the world is changing. You know, when I first started my business, you had to have a college email address to have a Facebook account, you know? So like how much things changed and how I was constantly morphing. Learned graphic design through that and website development, and, you know, really learned to kind of do all things to build a business. And I kind of call myself a serial entrepreneur for a while, because I would start all these different businesses and things. And then, you know, fast forward a few years, and we decided we were going to put our boys in a hybrid school, and they were going to go to school 3 or 4 days a week. And so I was like, well, I've always wanted to go back to real estate. Now's the time. Like, you know, it was kind of always in the back of my head. I really want to go get my license one day, but I knew I really didn't have the time for it while the kids were home all the time. I didn't want to be, you know, showing up with kids at showings and whatever.
Right.
My husband was always gone. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go get my license. I decided I was going to get my license. I remember distinctly, I called a friend who was a realtor and told him it was like a Saturday. And I think within 3 weeks total, I was fully licensed. I had done my course, passed my test, and was licensed by the state within just a few weeks, and really thought I would keep doing both businesses. I was like, you know, maybe I'll sell a house a year. I didn't have really high expectations of it, thought I would continue being a photographer, and very quickly realized I was going to have to make a choice. And so I retired from photography about 6 months into my real estate.
I'm glad you went on there and went deeper into it, because it sounds like to me, and you can express to us, a lot of the things that you were doing from a sense of marketing and so forth with the photography, you just flipped it over to real estate.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I had learned so much about what works, what doesn't work. And, you know, if you look at my social media, I don't have 20,000 followers, but most of my followers are my customers.
Right.
So they actually know me, and kind of learned what people want to see, what they don't want to see. They want to see, you know, you be authentic, you be yourself. Posting, you know, stories, I think, is the best thing that ever happened to social media, Instagram stories, because you get to show kind of that real life behind the scenes all the time that people really want to see. For a long time, I feel like social media was a highlight reel, and it still is for a lot of people. But I think being able to show those things behind the scenes, to really target and pull in customers, to use the experience from the brokerage that I had in college through all of the different, you know, I moved states 3 different times while I was building a business. And so I've restarted a business multiple different times through my career in photography, and really just reapplied that to, okay, now I'm going to build this business doing this thing.
Right.
And it was pretty seamless.
And I think a lot of people, just because you really went to the family infant photography niche, but really, you know, to be successful for as long as you were, you have to have repeat customers.
Absolutely.
Now, my personal experience, just, you know, my wife handles the family photo, you know, who she's going to have take, right. And I know we've used different people almost every time. And now when you're talking about this, I'm wondering, just like a real estate agent, you know, next year comes around, Christmas photos. Well, when the next time, whether a friend or family's buying a house or your next house, who are you thinking about? Are you staying in touch with that person one way, shape, or form or another? So when the next time comes around, they're going back, because that's really where, would you agree? I mean, you know, you're matched up now at Real with some people who been very successful in the business. Miss Wolf, we were talking about, and so forth. The real icing in the wealth in real estate is having the customers, that same customer 2 or 3 times.
Yeah. When I first got started in real estate, everybody was like, you know, it's the art of the follow-up.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to stay in touch with your customers. You have to stay top of mind. So when you close, you're doing the pop buys, you're doing whatever. And for me, I had done that for so long. I do have repeat customers. In fact, I still actually did do a session. I came out of retirement a few weeks ago. I did a session for clients, because they've been my clients for 10 years.
Right.
And it's, you know, I watched all 3 of their babies from newborn up. And so it's hard to say, no, I'm sorry, you have to go find somebody else, even though I kind of feel like I'm a part of your family, because you've welcomed me into some of your most intimate moments.
Yeah.
But following up with them was never a problem. And so it just kind of played into real estate of, I need to stay in front. I need to connect with you, send an email, remember your kid's birthday, remember that they like those suckers. And then, you know, a lot of those customers have turned into real estate customers too, because they already know, like, and trust me.
Yeah. Well, the some agents are doing it. I don't know how consistent they are, but I got it from Kelly Bello a few years ago. She was on one of well, she was probably in my first 50 episodes. But one of the things she had just done at the time was, it was pre-Christmas, and it was like, hey, come in for your family photos. And she rented out this place, and she wasn't taking the photos, but I was just thinking about you could sit there and you could actually take the photos, and actually, just another reason to bond with them, that it's actually you taking the photos. And
Yeah, I actually thought about doing that, and then I was like, well, I really do need to focus on just one business. And so actually my colleague Amy Wojcicki, and I have talked about doing a mini session giveaway close to Christmas, and just saying, hey, we're going to pay a photographer.
Customer appreciation.
But it's going to be our customer appreciation event.
Yeah, exactly. I think because it goes back to, like we were just talking about, the tchotchkes hanging out. If you put their name on it, and the same thing, you taking the picture, is the relationship, and they know that, hey, that every year you're going to have a customer appreciation. I don't know, the first week of December or whatever, and that you're going to be doing this, and it just gives them something to look for. Oh, we're going to wait till the first week of December because Meredith is doing her. We get free photos.
Right, and I think it's those things that you don't have to put your brand on it necessarily.
Yeah,
they're going to remember. That's the realtor that paid for our family photos every year.
Yep.
That's the realtor that did this. That's the realtor that remembered.
Well, another way, because some of these customers we don't really touch again, right? I mean, you might send them out on a newsletter, or maybe you do call them periodically, but to actually see them is rare.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so.
All right. So things are changing. Big topic we always talk about here is the brokerage. So you decide to get your real estate license.
I did. I decided to get my real estate license. I interviewed quite a few different brokerages. I highly recommend that for all new agents, because I've heard a lot of people on this podcast and others talk about how, in other careers, when you interview and you get the job, it's really exciting. In real estate, you always get the job. They always want to hire you. I mean, well, almost always.
Yeah.
And so you're really interviewing them, not the other way around. I learned that. That's something nobody told me when I first got my license. But somebody did say, hey, talk to a bunch of different brokers and just see. And so I did. I went and talked to a bunch of different people. Realized that some brokerages offer incredible splits, and some brokerages offer terrible splits, and some brokerages offer, all these different things. But I had made my decision on where I was going to go. And a friend called, and she was like, hey, I heard you're getting your license. I really think you should meet with my broker. And out of respect for her, I had already made my decision. I was done. But I love her, and I respect her a ton. And so I was like, I'll come meet with her. Can she meet today? Because I'm ready to hang my license. I'm licensed. I'm ready to go.
So you actually did already complete the test.
Yes.
You already passed. Okay.
Yes, and I was ready. I had the contract in my email, like the ICA contract in my email from the other brokerage I was going to go with, waiting for my e-sign on it. And so I kind of pushed that out and delayed it to go meet with Rosie Hetman and Lisa Murray at Atlantic Shores Realty in Jax Beach. And they're a small brokerage, very boutique. And I really just was meeting them out of, like I said, respect of my friend that, hey, yeah, sure, I'll do this. And sat down, and within 5 minutes fell in love with Rosie. She told me that she, at the time, had just decided to kind of start growing her brokerage a little bit. But I want to say she said she hadn't hired a rookie in maybe 4 or 5 years. And she started talking about what she does and how she does, and she's on the board for everything and involved in everything. And I feel like she's, if you actually read her full bio, she's got so many letters and council members and, all these things. And so she really knows her stuff. And Lisa, her partner, really knows her stuff as well. And to know that there was a small group of people who weren't used to having a new agent around, but were all willing to pour into me as somebody who loves to learn, I knew that was the place for me. And so I went in. They really took me under their wings. Every agent there. There's Rick Philippone was one of the agents there, and I called him my work dad. He would just let me follow him around and do, shadow him. Right. Rosie was the same. She would just let me follow her around and learn from her. And then she and Lisa both were available around the clock for me. I don't want want to give the wrong answer to a question. And so my pride is not so big that I won't ask really dumb questions. Or if somebody asks me something, I'll say, that's a great question. Let me find out.
Yeah.
And then I would text Rosie and Lisa and, ask them all these things. And so they were always available. They taught me so much, poured into me like crazy. And I think having that initial brokerage be so good absolutely catapulted me in my business, because I felt like I got a firm foundation of knowledge, experience, and really experienced agents who had been in the business for 20 plus years teaching me what I didn't know.
Couple learning lessons from that brief story there. One, you although you were anxious, you were ready to get going, you took one more meeting.
Yeah.
Made all the difference. You discovered this brokerage wasn't on probably anywhere on your radar screen, that was full of collaborating, giving, experienced people that you could tag along, mentor. You probably sat some open houses with some of them, or sat them for them eventually, type of thing. And I think one of the key components to agents who feel they've made the right choice in the right brokerage up front, or made a move to somewhere else, is that take the time, that mentorship or shadowing. I like shadowing better, because especially as a very new agent, I think there's been only a handful of the 200 plus agents I've had on that actually, went somewhere and said, hey, I'm not trying to do it. I just want to shadow you for these first 2 or 3 weeks and watch everything you do, and then figure out how they're going to run their business, instead of jumping in and like, hey, I got to get a deal right now, when realizing you have to, because your entrepreneurial experience with changing photography for different states, you were talking about moving around, that your patience and obviously desire to learn, it paid off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I knew that there was so much that I didn't know. And so these tenured agents allowing me to come in, and Rosie came to my house, I think the week after I got licensed, and did a listing appointment for me, right? Like, I was her customer. We did lots of role playing. We would go sit in the office, and I would just sit and listen to her on her calls. I would just sit beside her. I would do open houses with her.
Would she put it on speaker so you could hear the whole deal?
Yeah, she let me hear the whole thing that was going on. She taught me how to follow up with a lead and what to say. And she's a master of formulating her words. Like, she's like the ultimate wordsmith. And so I'd be like, there were also times where I would call her and, can you Rosie this for me? Can you just like make this sound better for me? And
right.
So I was so thankful for them.
I think, a lot of new agents have, obviously, in the same position they don't know what to say. They don't know how, because especially, and you already had some little taste of real estate, and your sister was in real estate. So you kind of actually had more experience going in, or more, knowledge of it. But we have I'm sure you run into them at the different things at Landmark or whatever. Some of these people enter this business with zero knowledge other than HGTV. That's kind of the joke with some of the brokers that have been on the show, and they'll mention it. Yep. This is not HGTV. This is not how it works.
It's not like that at all.
Yeah. And to have that person that you can, tag along with, and like you said, or sit in the office and put this call with their client on speaker and hear the interaction. It just goes back. Everyone knows I worked at Quicken Loans. We were in cubicles, but we could hear each other over, and these interactions and these objections and things that we had to, it could be, obviously negotiation is a big part of the business. Sure. You've got to be good at that. How do you negotiate a win-win, right? I think you've probably run into it. There's some agents out there that are combative. Their ego gets involved. So how do you handle those people? Yeah. I think it's kind of the laughable thing, because everyone wants to collaborate, but for some reason we find these agents who want to battle like they're the buyer or the seller. Yes. On these negotiations.
They kind of forget that we're all in the same field. And, like I said, I started at 14 running a restaurant with my kind of pseudo grandparents, and then I worked retail and waited tables, and, I did all kinds of jobs like that. And so you learn customer service, and then that absolutely applied to the business I'd run for 15 years of, communicating with clients, a newborn session, a lot of people don't know this unless they've had a newborn session in the last 10 years, but a newborn session is 4 hours with your client 10 feet away from you. And so really learning to communicate really well with clients and be curious about them. And I'm a naturally curious person, so be curious to my brokers or to other agents that I talk to. And I'm sure I've driven people crazy with my ridiculous questions, but really learning how to communicate, not just with customers and clients, but with other agents, to say like, hey, we are all in this together doing the same job, and we want what's best for each of our individual customers, but how we communicate and negotiate with each other is really important. My husband's also a chief growth officer of a tech company, and so he works from home, and I hear kind of like the cubicle thing. I hear his calls all the time for 10 years, and I've learned, I hear myself saying things that I learned from him, and he doesn't even know, because he was upstairs in his office and I was in mine. I was like, oh, that was good. Things will come out of my mouth, and I'm like, I think my husband taught me that, and he didn't even know.
Right. Well, I was just thinking about the 4 hours with the, I can imagine anyone who visualize these sessions, that there's some kids are good, and some are nightmares. And how you're keeping your cool, and that's real estate.
So the beauty of it is that I worked primarily with newborn babies, so 14 days old or younger. So they don't talk back, they don't scream, they don't hit me, none of those things. But they cry, they pee, they poop, they're naked most of the time.
Yeah.
And so you learn to work on the fly. You might have had this plan for how the session was going to go, but that first little accident.
Right. They're not feeling well that day. Yeah.
Or they won't stop crying, or, so I had to learn to work on the fly and basically sit in 3 and 4 hour interviews with people. And
to make mom feel like, because the kid is, whatever challenge the kid is having, mom already feels uncomfortable because she's paying for this time with you. She
just had a baby.
And so you're consoling her, and how, hey, it's okay. We've got this. I've got this. I do this all the time. This happens every day.
And the cool way that kind of translates into what I'm doing now is so much of that would become moms crying through telling me their birth stories, moms, struggling, telling me how their breastfeeding journey is going, or their formula feeding journey is going, and what do I do with this, and what do I do with that, and you really become their therapist. And like, let's be honest, right? That's what real estate is. 90% of real estate is being a therapist. Anyway. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a licensed therapist. I feel like I need to, but that is so much of what it is. It's just talking to people, figuring out what they need and want.
Well, so it goes back that I talked earlier, the agent being the pillar, the influencer, the community. You are with those clients because you've done it enough times, and not every path's the same, as we know, and every transaction has, whether it's financing problems or title problems or negotiation problems, whatever's going on. But you make it look like you've been on that path 1,000 times. Absolutely. And that's big part of the therapy, is telling them, hey, talking them down off the ledge, saying, hey, it's okay. Yep. We've got this. We'll get the closing. Yep. Let's just follow me now.
My very first transaction was an absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. Difficult in every way it could possibly be difficult, from just the customer being difficult to the builder being, it was just horrible. And my broker at the time said, you're getting this one out of the way. Like, everybody's going to have a really, really tough one. Yours just happens to be the first one. That client, to this day, she's still my client, has no idea she was my first transaction. Not a clue. And she never asked. I mean,
maybe she'll be listening to the podcast. I don't know. She'll find out.
She still won't know.
Because I think that's the differentiator. And sometimes, I don't know, I've been using imposter syndrome a lot lately. But we often forget, especially after you start doing enough transactions. I've been doing mortgages for 19 years, and you have to reflect on the fact that the clients, they've only done this a couple times, or it's their first time, or they've never run into this. But like how many times do people buying in Florida? It's different than buying in New York, right? And you've got to explain to them. They don't know there's a difference. They're buying a house. If you've lived through the nightmare of doing transactions in New York, Florida's a cakewalk.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But the negotiations, or now obviously we're having challenges with insurance and things like that, and talking them through that. How do you now you've been doing this a couple of years. You've got some solid transactions behind them. What are you doing now that maybe you initially maybe weren't doing with your clients, but kind of as you get started with them, foreshadowing what's going to happen?
So I think that's a really good question. I think one of the things that I probably didn't do as well in the beginning was really lay out, and I did learn this pretty quickly but to really lay out, one of the questions I ask either buyers or sellers is, has anybody walked you through what it looks like to buy a house in today's market? Has anybody walked you through what it looks like to list a house in today's market? And I have a thorough buyer guide and thorough seller guide that I take to every listing appointment or every buyer consultation that has outlined, hey, I'm going to talk to you about this stuff. I'm not going to read it to you. You get to take this book with you. I have it custom printed for every client, so that they have it as a reference point, and it literally goes through every single step of the process and what to expect. If this, then this, but also this is how these things always go. And I think that's been so huge to just prepare them so they know, because so many people, they do have a lot of pride and their egos are big, and they don't want to say, I don't know what this looks like. People are scared to ask questions. And, with somebody with an education background, I'm sure you know that. Like so many students are terrified to just raise their hand and say, I don't understand. And so to answer those questions before they're asked, but also give so many opportunities. Does that make sense? Do you have any questions? Those kinds of things, and to not do it in a condescending way at all, but to just say like, hey, when I was buying my first house, I didn't know this.
Right.
And so I make sure I tell all my customers this now. And I think a lot of people really appreciate that.
No, I think it's a differentiator, which kind of actually just kind of naturally rolls us into the buyer broker agreement now. The foreshadowing, because some people are buying a house and it's not a big deal. We buy cars, we buy houses, we do it every once in a while. It is what it is. We roll with the punches. Other people get extremely stressed out. Buyer's remorse. They've got that mother-in-law in their ear or father-in-law in their ear. Oh, did you do this? Did you do that? Type of thing going on, and so they get superly stressed out to where if you're already foreshadowing, we're going to hit a pothole here on day 3, and this is how we're going to overcome it. Yeah.
So I think with the buyer agreements, the way I'm really presenting that to a lot of I already did buyer consultations. I'm big on safety. That's another thing my first brokerage taught me was, and part of how I really built my business, they wouldn't allow us to do open houses alone. They would encourage us to forewarn any customers, run it through the forewarn system just to make sure. My husband is big on, I'll be like, hey, do you want to just ride with me? Because I've never met this customer before, whatever. But oftentimes I would always insist on a coffee date before. Hey, let's meet for coffee and then we'll go show houses today. So I was kind of already doing a buyer consultation. Again, I'm a curious person. I want to know what you're looking for, why you're looking for it. I want to know your personality to make sure we are a good fit. I don't want to waste your time or mine. So really presenting those things as, hey, this is just more disclosure. Thankfully, my business has been a lot of relocation customers. So a lot of those consultations will happen online virtually for me. And then the customer flies in town. They're not shopping for another agent at that point. They're flying in town for meetings with me and showings with me. But customers that are local, really just saying like, hey, this is just more disclosure. And yeah, it's a hiccup, but we roll with the punches, and we've always done that in real estate or business or entrepreneurship or whatever. There are always going to be new curveballs thrown at us, and it's, can you kind of matrix it a little bit and make sure that you can, either avoid the punch or roll with it.
Let's talk about this the relocation coming from out. You said virtually. Mm-hmm. Are you Zooming with them or whatever product you're using?
Yes,
you're getting a visual.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
Yeah. How do you think that's changed? From the standpoint of you had a call with them and then they show up.
I think it
because have you done it just with a phone call and not done the visual and then?
I have.
Okay. Do you sense a little bit of a difference?
A little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So another unique thing probably about my business is 95% of it comes from social media.
Mm-hmm.
So people feel like they know me a lot more than I know them because they see my face. I'm not afraid to get on there. My biggest tip to other agents is get on social media, show your face. Don't watch the videos back. Just post them. Like, you don't want to see it.
Yeah, exactly.
Just post it and be done with it because, out there is better than nothing out there. But because of that, I share a lot in my stories. And so I'll be like, oh, this is me getting ready this morning. And it's probably annoying. Maybe it's annoying to some people. I don't know. But so many people will say, oh my goodness, they'll show up and they'll say, your son's birthday was, what did you do for homecoming? What did you,
mm-hmm.
They know what's been going on with me. And so it's more great, now you know and trust me. It gives me the opportunity to be curious about you. You're not armed with me. You're very disarmed now because you know me already. And so now you're open with me because you kind of feel like you already know me.
Yeah.
So that virtual appointment has been huge. I think face-to-face, our brains don't register the difference really in something through a screen versus face-to-face.
You've heard me say
Yes.
that. You've heard listen to the podcast.
I've listened to the podcast.
I say, but it's
agents,
true.
but it is true.
That's not me saying. I actually stole that from someone else.
But
That's
it's
actually
something
true.
that I learned during COVID,
Yeah.
right? Everybody's talking about doing these things virtually, and is that bad for your brain? And so again, I'm a nerd. I researched, and it was like, oh, actually, like the percentage is like your brain really doesn't register it. And so if I happen to meet somebody who just found me through Google and didn't see my social media and we've just had a phone call, yeah, it's going to be absolutely different.
Yeah.
If it's based on a recommendation or a referral and they know, hey, my friend over here liked you and worked with you. Now we're meeting for the very first time and they haven't seen my social media. We haven't had that virtual appointment yet. It is absolutely different. It's a much more of, it's a blind date.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Well, I think we don't. Well, there's statistics out there, and the scientists will tell you that there's most of our communication is nonverbal. Although you and I are talking about our facial expressions. Obviously, when I'm thinking of something, I was thinking about my speech coach. What I want to say next. I'll look up in the air or look down because I'm thinking, and I want to take the visual out from distracting me, right? But that's just common communication. And when you're doing it on the video, people they're like, we're just sitting across like we are right now. And they start creating that relationship. And hey, this person seems. I think we get a lot of someone's integrity. Either are they genuine, type of feeling just through some video.
And I think that's the big thing too, is like being authentic. Don't be a chameleon. Don't be what other people think you need to be. Like if you show up on your social media or on those consultation calls the way you show up in real life, because if there's a disconnect there, then you lose all trust.
100%.
So if it just needs to match, even like the types of clothes you wear, all of those things matter so that when that person meets you face to face, they're like, yeah, you're exactly what I expected. Yeah. The last thing you want them to do is say, oh, you're really different than I expected.
Right.
Maybe you're a little taller or whatever. That's fine, you don't want them to be like, oh, like on your, that disconnect.
Yeah, you don't want to be that the showman on, put like you're putting on a costume and you're going out and performing, or acting as someone else, and then they run into you at the grocery store and you're not that person. You're this flamboyant person on the video, but you go in the grocery store. Now there's people around, so now you're more introverted or very standoffish type of thing. Yeah, you people have to feel the authenticity. Absolutely. I'd like one thing you wrote. Just shoot it and post, and I think most of everyone, because obviously one way I find guests is I see their posts on social media. Maybe they are the rising star, or they had a great month, maybe been doing it 20 years. There's a lot of agents I don't know. I wish more of them reach out to me and let me know, because there's some that don't want to come on because they don't think they're uncomfortable, and they don't we did get some out of their comfort zones. This is not that difficult, is it?
No, it's not. I was really nervous.
Right.
I was so anxious. I was texting all my friends that have podcasts, and I was like, can you give me any tips or tricks?
Yeah. But just the reality is people like you for who you are.
Right.
And you were created the way you are for whatever reason we don't know. And we'll never know.
Right.
But there's people attracted to you. There's others that are not.
Yep.
There's people that like the way you talk, and there's people that are not.
Absolutely.
Hopefully there's more likes than there is dislikes. That's something everyone should work on, to at least be somewhere in the positive area there. Yeah. But the reality is you have friends and family that love you for who you are, and they're not, you just got to go.
You just got to go. And now don't get me wrong, I might bump into you in the grocery store and be in gym clothes with no makeup. I'm not always camera ready. You do get what you get with my personality, and I think that's really important. And there are 12,000, 14,000 agents in Northeast Florida. If I'm not for you, somebody else will be, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I don't have to be for everybody, and I think accepting that. I'm from North Carolina. We're culture of people pleasers up there, and so you want everybody to love you all the time. And really, I think accepting and learning that everybody's not going to love me, and that is okay.
Yeah.
but me pretending to be something so they do love me is not going to be a good end for anybody. So I just have to be myself. And as long as I show up authentically, then they meet me and they're like, oh, like I already knew you.
Well, and I think the reality we were made that if we are who we are, what there's other, I think we all track like kind,
Yep,
whether whatever, hobbies you're into, whatever, you're going to attract other people that are like you. And that's intrinsically in all of us.
Right.
So if you just go out there and you put, hey, this is me, and I'm passionate about selling real estate, or I'm passionate about selling used cars. It doesn't matter. If you're passionate about it, you will attract people that are, looking in for your service. Yeah. And are like-minded.
And I think being real and not just posting about real estate. Here's this house tour. Here's this showing. Here's this whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And like, here's me hiking with my family this weekend in the mountains.
Yeah.
Here's, so they know your life too, I think really, really matters.
Well, yeah, you do very well on your Instagram, going down through it and looking at your stuff. Because that's another thing, you got someone moving from, wherever, doesn't know you, but they're able to go on there and, maybe they've got kids and they're looking at your kids and say, oh, your kids are a little bit older. So what have you experienced? What schools do they go through? Or your kids are the same age. Oh, what school are they going to? What do they do? They're playing a sport or whatever it is. They know that you're an active mom. You're doing these family things. You like hiking in the mountains. There's people that are going to like kind are going to say, well, yeah, whether they do it or not, they may say, I'd like to go hike in the mountains too. She looks cool.
Yeah.
They
say that. They say, what church do you go to? What soccer league does your son play at? What, all of those questions, because they need to know that you're a real person with a real life and you can actually help them, because they're trying to visualize themselves living here, even if they're already local and they're just looking to move to another neighborhood. They're trying to visualize themselves living there and what life is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So show them.
I think I was talking to my wife the other day. We were talking about Limelight Theater. We were talking about pre-show, and I said, because where it's at, and it's kind of, you don't even realize it's there, and we want to expose new people to it that never been in here. We've got to shoot some video, because people, I think today, as they're, relocating here, they're on YouTube and they're looking for the videos of, hey, what's it like to live at Jack's Beach or St. wherever, what's it like to be at the splash pad at Nocatee or whatever it is. They're wanting those videos.
Absolutely.
And the more you can show them and expose yourself being in there, you become that. It goes back to those things, the resource that a real estate agent is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Looking back, and it's only been a short time, but you've had a lot of great success. What would you do differently if you could zap back in time? Is there anything in there you would do differently? Anything that didn't go the way you thought it was going to go?
It's a really good question.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've been so fortunate. Like, I truly believe that God led me to the brokerage I started at, and they had some neat rules in place. That one of the rules was that you can't sit in an open house alone. And so I ended up sitting open houses with Amy Wojcik. We were like, okay, well, you want to sit some open houses together? Okay, we didn't go into it to be friends. She's become one of my best friends. I call her my work wife now. We work together all the time. People actually think we're a team. We were actually rising stars together for Real Producers. We're not a team officially, but we do work together a lot. And so I think some of the things that I didn't know were going to be such a huge benefit worked so well to my advantage, and really built my business based on some open houses and some things I did. If I were to do anything differently, I think it would probably just be, maybe to start customer appreciation events earlier, or maybe market a little more tangibly.
What do you mean by that?
I have questions. So old school marketing, like from when I worked at my old brokerage, right? There were billboards and radio ads and mailers and all of those things. I've operated all of my businesses from the perspective that I might be able to mail out 200 mailers to my neighborhood, but if I spend those same amount of dollars on Facebook ads, then 10,000 people are going to see it versus 200. And they may just scroll right past it, or they may do essentially the same thing you would do by opening a mailer from the mail, right? They might stop and read it. So a lot of my business I've done through social media, through online marketing. I do think maybe I would go back and farm a couple of specific neighborhoods with some paper mailers, some pop buys, that kind of thing. But honestly, I've seen success not doing that.
Right.
So I think I could have grown it maybe a little faster.
Well, I asked you the question, what you would have done in the past, maybe you would have done that. So let's talk moving forward. What are some of the things that you would like to add to your business right now, such as farming in neighborhood? Because I think having had Krista Mashore on and Go Bethke, but Krista Mashore specifically, she's all about farming neighborhoods. That's what she coaches and teaches and has kits and join her club thing to do. I think because our way Florida's developed, unless you're living out in like Middleburg where everyone's got their, if you're living in St. Johns County, everyone's living in a PUD, planned urban development.
Exactly.
90% of them are.
Yeah, so I think adding in farming is some of the things that I'm adding to my marketing of what I'm doing, but trying to do that in a really unique way. So to add community involvement, to say, how am I reaching out to the mom group in that neighborhood? Can I sponsor your neighborhood wine night? Can I show up and be there?
Yeah.
And I'm not the cringy real estate agent who's going to be like, I'm a realtor. That's just not my jam. It's going to come up naturally in conversation at some point, and hopefully they'll be like, oh, she didn't even bring that up, like most realtors, but a lot of us are really cringy.
You're gonna have to give me an example of cringy, but go ahead.
So just those different things kind of outside the box. I've always kind of operated outside the box with every aspect of my life, and so I try to not do a lot of what everybody else is doing and really think, well, what would I like? How would I benefit? What might somebody else do that would make me their customer, that would make me want to call them in the future? And some of that is just being a good human, like somebody that our motto at Real, which is the brokerage I'm at now, is work hard, be kind. Like, work hard and be kind. People are going to like you. But part of it, too, is being different, remembering people, remembering their birthdays, just doing some of those different things of maybe we sponsor a wine night, maybe we sponsor an ice cream social for the kids, maybe we bring in a food truck, whatever that looks like, but to do things that are just outside the box that other people aren't doing.
All right, so I want to take photography and real estate and you chime in of where, because here's the difference I see to create this question. In photography, people hire you for this service, and you were really specializing in infants, and they're only infants for a few days.
Yep.
So you weren't, although, I'm sure your circle, naturally people ask, hey, what do you do? Photography. But in real estate, bigger transaction, much more larger scope of people to work with, because you could be working with 80-year-olds, single moms, whatever, everything in between, right? All ages, family sizes, no family, that type of thing. Real estate takes a relationship building process. Now, you may get, because I don't know if you buy leads or whatever, you may get a lead come in from a lead buy, and it's a direct thing. Hey, I bought leads, I got a lead. But the truly successful agents, as I'm sure you saw at Atlantic Shores, right? They had business because she was involved in all these things. She loved what she do. She got involved, and you live your life you are a real estate agent after 5 o'clock, not just because you closed the door to the studio or closed the door to your office at home doesn't shut you off as a real estate agent. You're going out with friends or whatever, or you're going over, maybe someone's having a Halloween party's coming up, right? You're going to a Halloween party. You are still really representing stuff. Now, you're not going around handing out business cards, particularly being forward like that. But if someone starts talking to you, the great thing about our iPhones, we just tap them and say, hey, call me and let's set up an appointment and talk. But you are always representing yourself and creating those relationships. So what have you learned from that 24/7, you're a real estate agent, where photography, was it, I don't see it being quite the 24/7 representation. You know what I'm saying?
I joke and say I don't know what boundaries are. And really, I mean, like, kind of like setting personal time limits for myself on, like, hey, when I'm off. We don't really have that freedom as agents. When I was a photographer, because it was newborns, and I did a lot of birth too, so I was on call for, like your doctor would be for a birth.
Oh wow, you'd show up for, wow.
I actually did. I had a customer or a client who had to decide between she wanted to have a home birth, and she needed to decide between a doula and a photographer, and so I was both for her. I went and did my doula training so that I could be both for her. But to this day, I just sold her a house a few months ago over the summer. I love her. She, like she became my friend. But I think because I am an extrovert, you might blame it on me being from the South, or I don't know what it actually is about my personality. But I do make friends with people, and so even in my photography business, I would have clients texting me in the middle of the night asking my opinion or my advice on my baby's doing this, or and just because I didn't advertise that I was a family photographer, yes, I did those newborn pictures, and then 3 months and 6 months and 9 months and 12 months and 2 years and 5 years and 10 years, and then there's senior portraits.
Yeah.
So same for real estate. If you look at my feed, you're going to see that I'm a luxury agent, right? I also have a $270,000 listing, right? But I do everything. So a lot of the advertising that I do is to market myself as more of a luxury agent, but I will work with anybody, and I'm happy to work with anybody. And I treat that $270,000 listing the same way I treat the $2.3 million listing, and I am available all the time for my customers, but that's not new to me. That's something I've always done, because my goal is always to if you want to be my friend, I've done my job.
When you were doing the photography though, and you were at, who knows, community, social, whatever, were people coming up and going, how is the photography business? Because I know you're at socials now and they're asking you what's going on with real estate.
People would always come up and say, you have the best job ever. You just get to snuggle babies.
Oh, is that okay?
Yeah. And so people would want to talk about that.
Yeah. Until they start screaming and want to
the market is, but they would, they would say, how's your business? They knew I was an entrepreneur, and they would say, how's your business going? Or did you shoot any, shooting babies sounds horrible, but did you photograph any cute babies this week? Or, things like that. So people have always come up to me and asked about my business, or asked if they could hire me.
Yeah. Because I really think a lot of people don't understand that, and even in the mortgages, because we feed off you guys, right? So you're out there. If you're calling us at 8:00 on Saturday, we're reacting.
Right,
we're flipping open our laptop or whatever, doing whatever we can, or at least getting on the phone the customer if that's what you guys need us to do. That's the way our business works. It's not a 9 to 5 and hang up your coat and that you're off work. There's no, you've got to take it when it's there and roll. And I think a lot of people getting in the business don't actually fully understand it, that they're actually on, I don't even know if on calls, right? You're on. There's no off, right? There's really, lucky maybe you get someone to work with and who allows you to shut it off on vacations. But, we were talking with Go Bethke as she was talking about, going on, her trips, and we've all done it. I'm sure you've done it. You've gone on what's supposed to be a vacation, and your cell phone, and you're flipping open your laptop. And
if business is slow, the key to having business pick up is just planning
go
a vacation.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, exactly. The phone will start ringing. You'll get a listing that week.
Absolutely. Or 3.
Yes,
exactly.
Absolutely. You mentioned Forewarn. And I wonder, and it's provided by Florida Realtors and I'm really curious. I'd love to get some stats from them on actually how many agents are using it on a regular basis.
I know, that would be really
Have you gotten some? Have you pulled up anyone on Forewarn and like, ooh, yeah?
I did have a referral actually that a client had said, hey, this person that I know wants to sell their house. Be careful not to give.
Yeah.
Personal information, wants to sell their house. Would you be interested in going for a listing appointment? And I was like, yeah, of course. She said she would meet me there with the person to introduce us.
So it's like a kind of an associate or friend of yours that was referring you?
Yeah, so another client of mine was referring me to her friend, and she was like, I'll just come over so that you're comfortable. I can introduce you. And so I didn't do, any kind of forewarning of this person because my friend's going to meet me there. I've already worked with her for over a year.
She's endorsing the situation.
Endorsing this person. I fully trust her. So we showed up. I got very strange vibes. I am kind of an empath, I think. And so I really pick up on people's vibes. I have a strong gut instinct about people. And my gut was, do not work with this person. And there were just a couple of things that were said that really, were like, okay, things that make you remember that. And about a week later, I'd had a couple of conversations with this potential customer, and nothing super serious, just enough more red flags that I was pretty sure I wasn't going to work with them. And then the customer that I knew called and said, are you still working with that person? And I said, well, they've still been reaching out to me, but not really. I don't think I'm going to take the listing. I don't feel quite right about it. I'm so sorry. I hope that doesn't offend you. And she was like, no, actually, I just found out there's this deep record there. There were actually, he had just gotten out of prison. There was an assault record, all of these things. And so everything I was feeling was absolutely solidified. So, of course, I put him in forewarn really quickly. And I was like, oh, my goodness, because it shows a criminal record, and that criminal record in there terrified me. Mm-hmm. And so now I already really, even through my photography business, I mean, a lot of times that meant meeting people in the woods alone. Right.
Yeah.
So I had my concealed carry in North Carolina. I would always have a weapon on me. I know that's a little, whatever.
We're all for that here. You can talk about that here. My listeners are for that.
Yes, so
although I don't say that.
My gun on me then, so I just kind of came from that mindset of you kind of stalk people before you go meet them in the woods alone, or you stalk people before you show up in their house, because I would go to my customers' houses a lot of times. So I already kind of did that for real estate too. But then after that, now I forewarn every single person.
Very good advice and very good story. And I'm going to endorse Gift of Fear. Because that's what you had.
Yes.
And if you have not read that book or audible that book, it is a long one, but that's exactly what it talks about. You had the heebie-jeebies, right?
Yeah.
Something about it, the hair stood up on the back of your neck. And that's exactly what Gift of Fear talks about, because he interviews all these people who've had been assaulted or whatever, obviously survived because he's interviewing them. And all of them talk about they knew they were going into a bad situation, but their intrinsic thing, in this case, your friend was with you. Instead of, if your friend wasn't with you, like, well, you would appease yourself by saying, well, my friend endorsed him.
Right.
I'm going to go over there. My friend endorsed him. I'm going to go over there. It's cool because even though you were already, And women have a better, intrinsically, if I keep using that word today, innately have a better than men do.
Yes.
But the one thing we do, and it talks about in the Gift of Fear, is I don't want to be prejudiced. We start appeasing ourselves. I don't want to be prejudiced. Oh, my friend said he was cool. We start trying to appease our mind. We start fighting it instead of actually understanding. If you feel the heebie-jeebies, you need to get out of that situation.
Sorry. Yeah. I love that the book is called The Gift of Fear.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to read that because I think it is a gift. So often that gut instinct, and I've learned through my life, and every woman I've ever talked to about this topic, and probably men too, but specifically women, like you said, I think we just have that stronger, by nature, gut instinct about things. And every woman I've ever talked to says you have to learn to trust your gut. And if you don't, those are the times that it's come back to bite you, is when you ignore that gut instinct.
Yep.
You'll almost always be proven that it was right to start
with. Yeah, 100%. Luxury. Let's talk about luxury.
Okay.
I think my personal opinion, and I'm not a real estate agent. I've done mortgages and talked to many real estate agents.
Yep.
I really don't understand the actual pursuit. Now, I understand as any business person, even I think Gogo and I were talking about it. Actually, I think I have a clip of her. If you want to go after $250,000 homes, great. Well, you're going to make, an average percentage of what a real estate agent makes on 250. If you want to go and hang out into more than $1 million or whatever, you're going to make that much more, right? But the term luxury is the terminology is it's not the price point, it's the service. It's the service. But I'm like, well, why do you really have to put luxury in front of it?
I don't really buy into the theory that it's not the price point. It is a service.
Yeah.
I treat all of my customers the same, regardless of their budget or their list price, right? So $200,000, $2 million, you're going to get the same service from me. Mm-hmm. So to me, maybe I'm just like, I give a luxury service, right? That is part of why I call myself more of a concierge agent, is that I go above.
I like the concierge agent
I go
part.
above and beyond. It's who I am as a person. I go above and beyond for my friends. I go above and beyond for my customers. It's just it probably bites me back a couple of times, but I do always go above and beyond. So I will reach out and get the quotes for you. I'll meet the contractors. I'll do, I just do all the things that I can to make every experience as stress-free as possible. Buying a house is really stressful.
Yeah.
Selling a house is really stressful. How can I alleviate some of that? That's kind of my goal. And because I've done it and I know what it feels like to work with an agent, and know what it feels like to work with, anybody who is either doing those things and making it easier, or not taking anything extra off of your plate and actually making it more stressful. Yeah. So my goal has always been, let me make this as stress-free as possible, because we can all acknowledge it is stressful, regardless of how many times you've done it or not done it. And then as far as luxury, I kind of put that more on a price point. But to be honest, it's not something I really set out to do. It's just the market I fell into, which I know a lot of agents will probably be like, what? We work really hard to get in there, whatever. It was just the market I fell into. My very first transaction was $800,000.
Yeah.
And most of my transactions, I think right now my data is that my average sale is 750 or 800,000.
Yeah.
So it's just been kind
Well,
of
it's kind of natural in this area. I mean,
It is.
there's no real, although, I mean, if we search, actually, in this area, we have to search for a $200,000 home. I mean,
Right.
really find one.
Right.
500,000 is probably
Pretty much the
average. And then, to find $1 million is just a street over.
Yeah. And I think in Duval County, the like luxury threshold is, I think 600,000, maybe it's even 500,000. But in St. Johns County, the luxury threshold for what, is determined as a luxury home is 800.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will say, oh, you're a luxury agent. Well, to me, luxury doesn't really start until you're at like 1.2, 1.3.
The mystery's out on what determination of luxury real estate. I really, I wonder if it was really created from a training standpoint that they could sell you on another course. I don't know. That's just my broad, Tracy speaking direct.
I do think there's the different, you are working with a different type of customer at that price point.
Yeah.
And so I'm still going to treat them the same way, but there are different things that you need to know, right? They want to know how many pounds the boat lift can hold. They want to know how close the club is. They want to know, there's just different answers to different questions that you need to be familiar with. And if you can proactively answer those questions. I was showing a $5.8 million home this week and was able to say, your biking distance to the Ponte Vedra Inn and Club. I know that's important to that customer, right? Versus, a person buying a $200,000 house wouldn't.
Well, there's not as many. There's a lot more features and stuff by buying a car. The more you spend on the car, the more features are there, and we still never use all of them. Right. It's like these computers now today. It's like our brains. We aren't using it like 8%. Yeah. But you can talk to them and tell them it's got it all because one day they may need that.
Right. And if you know that you can tell them it has that, then they can forget it in 10 minutes. But they're like, oh, this is so amazing.
It sounds like to me, listening to you today, you understand that every customer is part of your marketing campaign. You're giving 110% to everyone. You're going above and beyond. Is basically what you were kind of explaining there a little bit. I don't think every agent does that. And I think for you it's internally you were brought up that way. That's the way you are. The agents that you were working with at Atlantic Shores were dealing with a lot of these luxury clients, right? That they realize that I've got to impress this customer because it's a gate to the next customer. Because that $2 million person typically probably isn't getting their real estate agent online. They want to ask their friends. They want their friend to recommend someone if they don't, as they want to recommend. But how explaining to an agent the importance of there's marketing as a physical marketing as you've grown up doing advertising, billboards. Yeah, that's marketing, but that customer in front of you is also a walking billboard.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the best marketing you can do is to have someone else recommend you.
Yeah.
Right. So my goal, people ask, what do real estate agents want for a closing gift? We want to give you a closing gift. What do you want? Your referral.
Yeah.
I want you to go on that Facebook group, and when you see somebody post in there that they're looking for an agent, I want you to tag me. If you had a good experience, if it's honest, don't lie.
Yeah.
But if you had a great experience, that's the best thing you can do for me because you saying my name is so much more powerful than me saying my name.
Yes.
I never advertised anything paid as a photographer. Not one time. Everything I did was organic, word of mouth, through reach, through all of those things. Now I would sponsor events, and more of that even was like donating to auctions or, doing those different things to get my name out there. But other people talked about me. And so my goal in real estate is always the same. I want your experience to be so good that you're sharing that with other people. And if I fail at that, then that is a complete failure to me. If you don't feel like you want to recommend me to somebody else, I could not have failed in any bigger way.
Yeah. I know, because my wife has had numerous clients come off some of these. I won't say the name of the rating site, but one of these rating sites where they're marketing to people who are on social media. Obviously, the algorithms find out that they're looking at real estate. Well, these sites where people can leave reviews about agents are showing up in front of them, and they're going in reading the reviews, and they've told her, hey, I saw your review on so-and-so. That's why I called you.
Yep.
So 100% to get those clients to, like I said, get on social media, talk about it. I think that, I personally would recommend people to do a few short videos. There's, with some clients just saying, hey, this was great working with you. Here's the trouble. Paula Powell, who was on a couple weeks ago, she's trying to do, and I think this is great advice for everyone. It's great putting that, hey, just sold on Instagram. They're on a timer. Just sold on Instagram type of thing. But to actually do a video and say, hey, I just closed this transaction. This is some of the troubles, get real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think sharing the experience that people have and discussing that with customers out there to say, okay, yes, we want to hear the good review, right? We always want to hear the good review. But what about what wasn't good? What about what went bad? And how did they interact when it was not easy? And I think having, a customer video testimonial is a really, really great idea.
Yeah.
Actually, I might have to incorporate that.
Yeah.
Just to have somebody come on and be like, hey, there's going to be bumps in the road. What did she do during then? What did she do during that time that made you say, I would work with her again and again and again?
If I owned a title company here in town, I don't know if there's any title companies listening right now, but I would have a room that's built just for that. And it doesn't even have to be that big. You got a camera set up, so it's all there. You can put a green screen behind them because it would be great to put the picture of the house or the logo of the company, or what, you both, but you know what I'm saying? And just have they just step in and they say, hey, how was your experience with Meredith?
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
We should pitch that to Brett over at Landmark.
Yeah, they've got room. Yeah, David's into that.
Plenty of space.
Yeah. We briefly, I want to just finish up because I think the buyer broker agreement and so forth. We kind of touched on that on the surface because you've been doing it a little differently. But what are you doing differently now after the summer and what you have to get signed versus what you were kind of doing before, which was more of a, I don't know if you want to call it informal, but you were doing a buyer broker agreement or a buyer broker consultation. Were you actually having them sign an agreement?
I wasn't actually.
No. So now you got the agreement. So what are you doing a little differently?
I would say the only thing I'm doing really differently is asking for the signature and explaining that a little bit more, right? Hey, I'm still going to try to negotiate this. This is what this looks like. Just having that candid conversation. I am the agent that for my listing appointments and my buyer agency appointments, if you don't like me and you don't want to work with me, fire me.
Yeah.
So I think the hard thing with the buyer agency agreements is I want to go on a couple of dates before I ask you to get married. So that's tough for me. I want you to know that you want to work with me before I say, hey, by the way, I need you to sign this. So I'm doing more pre-touring agreements. So if I do have a buyer that I sit down with and say, okay, we're going to coffee, we're going to go see these houses today, we're going to do a pre-touring agreement for either.
Do you explain that to them a little bit? Say, hey, I know, we just met and I don't want you to feel committed, but I do need to have something signed today. I've got the full commitment, or I've got, hey, we're just going to go this weekend or whatever, the dating one. Yeah. Do you kind of present it that way and explain that, hey, I've got these two, this is what we're leading up to?
I actually don't. So what I do is I will say, hey, if you decide to work with me, I'll have you sign this different agreement. But for our first day out seeing houses, I'm actually going to have you sign this pre-touring agreement, and I actually add in additional terms. I don't know, some lawyer can probably tell me that that's not allowed, but I'll add in additional terms and put the specific addresses of the specific homes we're seeing that day.
Right.
So that the form actually says something like, they're working with me for this many days. And instead I'll say they're working with me on these properties for this many days. Right. And so the touring agreement is specific to those. And I use kind of the verbiage that I just used with you is there is a marriage contract that's going to come later, but I'd like to go on a date first. And then even beyond that, though, both with my listing agreements and my BBAs, once they're signed, I tell all of my customers, legally, yes, I can enforce this and hold you to it. But if you're not happy with my service, if you're not happy with working with me, I don't want to continue, and I'm not going to force you to.
Right.
So don't try to cut me out of a deal. Yeah. That's wrong, right? But if you just decide you want to go work with a different agent, just tell me, and I'll release you from this contract. Just to be honest.
I mean, it sounds like you're being real with them,
Yeah.
being authentic. This is the way it is. We've got to get these things signed, and here's what's going to go on. Um, I'm really curious. I think we should get some more stories out there on the social media a little bit to the agents, because I think there's still ones that don't have as much. You've done it a handful of times, whatever already. So you've gone through this process of actual real live game time with customers. Obviously, there's some agents that aren't doing as much business as you are, so they might be running on their first one right now. They may not have had a buyer broker consultation yet because they just haven't had a buyer to work with yet, and so they're going through this. They need to hear these stories. But I think because I think there's still some there's obviously animosity. I've been to some of these meetings. I think you were in one where where it's like people, the information out there is all over.
And you can ask 2 different attorneys and 2 different brokers the same questions, and you're going to get 4 different answers.
Yes.
And so I think that's the really tough part. I think that one that we were in together was one where there were multiple people that should be informed that all have very different answers. And I think familiarizing yourself as an agent is huge. I've been going to these BBA meetings and trainings and anything I can sit in for months now, just to make sure. Like, again, I'm a curious person. I like to know that I know what I know, and I like to know what I don't know too, and then try to figure that out. So I learn. I like to learn. I like to know all of the different options. So I've watched different brokerages trainings on what they're telling their agents. I know what my president is telling my company, all these different things. But I think role playing it with other agents and sitting down and saying, hey, if you were coming to me, you're coming to sit down with me, and I'm potentially going to hire you to go buy a house with you. And the first thing you say is, oh, by the way, I need you to sign that you're going to pay me this percentage when this house closes. Maybe. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
You you have to explain it, and you have to be real about your explanation, right? Stay within the bounds of, what's required and what's allowed, but be very honest. Hey, I know that this is kind of different. I know and that's part of why I do the touring agreements. After you've been with me for a couple of hours, you're either going to know you want to work with me or not. Probably that might, I hope that doesn't sound arrogant. I don't mean it that way. I just mean, because I am friendly and personable, you're probably either going to really,
if you didn't have that confidence, really you wouldn't be doing real estate.
Yeah. So,
more people have liked you than not. Let's put it that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of one of those people that if I can get in front of you, you're probably going to be my customer if I just get a chance.
All right. Let's flip it over to the listing side. Cause there's, again, who you talk to, what broker, what company, whatever, when you've been sitting down, imagine you've had some listing appointments here, hopefully in the last 90 days, the conversation now is changed a little bit from, I think agents have for a long time just assumed and just went with it. But now you actually have to take 5 minutes and explain what kind of, have you had any pushback, or have you found just people just want to they just ask a question just to see what you're going to say?
They just want to ask questions for the most part. I've had some pushback. I think the media has really given a false view of what the National Association of Realtors settlement even is, and what that, there's all of this media saying sellers no longer have to do this, and well, they never did, right? Commission has and always will be, always has been and always will be negotiable, right? Like I think I say that 1,000 times a week now. That's always my answer. So commission always has been and always will be negotiable, right? But then really explaining to sellers who are saying, well, does that mean I don't have to pay a buyer's agent now? You never did.
However, if you've tipped the bellhop, he's probably going to put the luggage in your room.
Well, and something I've told
and
them
not
too
throw it.
is, hey, if you and your neighbors both selling their houses and I come in, I work as a buyer's agent and a listing agent, right? I come in and your house, they're offering 3% and this house is offering 1%. As a buyer's agent, historically, I show both houses, and I don't care which one. My customer never knows the difference in the commission being offered, because that was how we operated and how we worked, right? As ethical agents, I would show both houses, and they would not know until they saw that Alta, oh, you only made 1% on this or whatever. And I wouldn't, coerce them either way.
Right.
Now, based on what my PBA says, I need to show them and say, hey, do you still want to see this? Even though this house is only offering this, and then sellers immediately say, okay, how much do I need to pay?
Yeah.
And so I think overall it's making it more likely that a seller is going to need and want to pay a buyer's agent.
I like the way you just gestured that, but it's stating the obvious. As a buyer um, representative, buyer's agent. You've already had this discussion that, and they feel, hey, 2, 3, 4%, whatever it is, or $4,000, $10,000, right? The bananas, as Patty Ketchum says, your bananas. And then you go to someone and they're not offering that many bananas. Well, the seller's like, well, I'm not coming up with the difference. Let's go look at another house.
Yeah.
Because that's one thing about our community. There are some unique homes, but we live in a lot of PUDs.
Yes.
There's a lot of that same models 3 doors down.
You've got options.
Yeah.
We live in a market where you have a lot of options. And I do think, obviously, as an agent, as a buyer's agent, I'm always happy to try to negotiate with the seller, with the seller's agent. Our brokerage is actually recommending like a complete decoupling. So it's seller to buyer's agent, and we're, as the listing agents, we're not involved in that at all. And just saying, really make it a term of your offer. And I think that's good because that works really well for your sellers. I think buyer's agents, as a buyer's agent, I don't love that, not knowing like, oh, are there going to be multiple offers here, and my commission might make the difference in this. But I think being able to negotiate it, that is great. I'm also not the agent that's ever going to let a customer not get a house because they can't afford to pay.
Well, you've run your own business for a long time. You've learned how to there's a value to your service.
Yeah.
There comes a point where it's like, no. I would rather go spend the time with my kids.
Yes, absolutely. And I have stood in a listing appointment before, and somebody's tried to negotiate my side of my commission down, and I have to say, I really know my value, and we just may not be a good fit for each other, and that's okay. Because I do value my time, and I do value my family, and we call it our bubble time. Like, I need to go into the bubble sometimes with my people, and I value that tremendously. So I do put a price on that, and I know what it is.
Yeah. Anything you'd like to add?
I don't think so. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on. I think, I told you I was going to try to cut down. I actually wrote some times down. That's something I've never done before. Some times down, but I'm going to go through. I think there's some very good parts, whether they're just a minute or 3 or 4 minutes there, we can compile in. I'm going to send you the raw footage too, because I think you could go through and take some of these clips because, again, it's real you.
Right.
And you talking about whatever and how you want to do it. But I think putting those things and getting your YouTube channel up and running is going to be a bonus for you.
Yeah, I love it. You're going to be the catalyst to me finally launching a YouTube channel. It's great. Thank you.
All right. Meredith, I appreciate you coming on. Everyone, please leave a review, all that good stuff. Check out the Instagram page. It's these videos are on YouTube. The live is on the edit. Not that there's much editing to do, but there'll be the edited version will come out on, what's today? Tuesday. Will come out on Friday, and the audio will be out